Okay, so they gave you butterflies. What does that mean? And how did you end up taking it? Or are you here looking to figure out how you should take it? So, butterflies are also always depicted, most often, not always, most often depicted in movies as like something happening in your stomach. Not actual butterflies, but this feeling of like, some people describe it as like little knots, or like some people are like little bursts of excitement in their stomach, or little twists. And sometimes they describe it as excitement, or both. Like it's like painful but exciting or something. And sometimes it's when they first meet someone, or yeah, usually when they first meet someone, but sometimes even like after they talk to someone a few times, or when they finally go out with someone on a date, or have longer than a few minutes of a conversation with someone, or at the end of a date or something. Or when someone like, starts telling them how they feel about them, or you start telling that person how you feel about that person for the first time, or to ask them out on a date. There's just so many ways. But oftentimes we're going to just give more examples from movies. So movies, they often depict it as like something happening in someone's stomach, but sometimes they just say like, oh my God, I have butterflies in my stomach. And so they don't really explain anything. So sometimes our subconscious is just picking up that interaction of like, okay, these are clues for me to maybe keep in mind, because sometimes I have these feelings and no one's explained them to me. And so sometimes it could be that they're just met for the first time, and maybe they have like a bad interaction and they're mean to each other, but the person's like, oh, but that person gave me butterflies. But then it's like, oh, but they had such a bad interaction and stuff. And it's like, that doesn't mean that like someone's wrong for you just because you had a bad interaction with them. But in the movie, it's just like, like often a lot of movies, especially in the past, like constantly show like different toxic like patterns between two people. And then they depict it as something like good in the end, and they end up being together, and they make it in a way that you're like rooting for them. And then and in the beginning they're like, oh, but I had butterflies. But I know that like, there's something there because we had butterflies. Like, but I hate them, but we had butterflies. Like stuff like that sometimes. And so sometimes it could even just be them interacting and having a conversation with each other. And they talk about this butterfly feeling. So why is that so important? It's because what you might describe as butterflies might not be the same as what you're seeing in the movie, or it might be. It might be the same idea as what they're talking about, and your subconscious or even your conscious has picked up like, oh yeah, it's like just like in all those movies that constantly depicted that like, oh my God, they had butterflies and they met someone and there was just this like feeling that they couldn't explain and it was in their stomach. But sometimes in the movies, like, yeah, they are compatible and stuff like that. And, they mix the big bunch of like toxic traits and good traits, a bunch of them together. So it kind of doesn't make sense. Realistically, like in the real world, or it does, but it's usually goes more towards like a lot of red flags. But you might be like, oh, well, I'm having these similar feelings and similar stuff that happened constantly in all these movies. Maybe you're not even thinking about the movies, but you're just thinking like, oh my God, like, yeah, this is definitely the butterflies that I've heard about, and so there's something there. Like you just can't let go. And there's something that's just like, you feel like is pulling you towards that person, or you feel like that's what it is telling you. And so maybe you end up like going out with them and going on several dates and stuff. And you keep holding on to this feeling of, well, I had butterflies. So it means something. I don't just get butterflies with anyone else. And so you have to be mindful of the fact that like the butterflies they might be showing to you in movies and shows, or what people have talked about that they might have picked up from movies and shows, or they have been, someone has described to them, but that person that might have described that to them might not actually know what healthy relationship is. And so what they deem as like a healthy relationship is actually not healthy. Like, so I'm not saying all butterflies are bad, but I'm saying like what most people describe as butterflies is generally is based off of movies or shows or something, and it's generally not a good thing because it's oftentimes your body's way, the universe, your soul, whatever you think wherever you think the signs come from, is telling you that, hey, you should proceed with caution or go a totally different route. And so it's not like a bad thing. It doesn't mean that that person's bad or good or anything. It just means, or maybe it's a timing thing, but it just means that like, hey, there's a feeling that's coming up. And it could be like you just ate something, and if you ate something like really bad and it's hurting your stomach, you could say like, oh, it's because of that. But sometimes you ate that thing and you're having that interaction like it was meant to be. All of that was also meant to be. So keeping an eye out for that. But if you try it again and go out with them again and maybe a different type of feeling comes up, you're like, oh, like, or the butterfly and a different feeling comes up, you have to be mindful of that. So because oftentimes it can depict that there's some flags there that you should be watching out for, and it might not be green flags because of the way that you've picked it up from your environment and stuff. So it's really important for you to identify what these butterflies are and not quickly identify it as good or bad because you're not 100%, if you're not 100% sure. But sometimes we're like so sure. Like I remember in my 20s, like I was like, oh, I'm so sure. Like, oh, the butterflies are good. Like there was no way I would question it at all. It was like, oh, I have butterflies. I've heard that's a good thing. Like, yeah, I've never had that with someone else. I want to see where this goes, or I want to see what this is. But it's like, well, if I actually sat there and looked at different times that I had butterflies, it's like, well, that seemed like a butterfly moment too, but you know what? I ended up realizing that that wasn't it, but this time, this is it. This is for sure. And then you end up realizing that like, if you sat and looked at it, it's just like, well, there was a lot of time that this butterfly feeling came up and it actually wasn't great. So I'm going to proceed with caution. And then you could also learn to strengthen your intuition, to like literally go in even and figure out like what a yes and no means within. So like literally there's like one way that I do it that I talk about often. And there's like a lot of people that really teach you like through classes and stuff how to strengthen it in many different ways. But one simple way is that I read online years ago, doing it with paper. And then I've just translated in with doing it within. And so that is like I used to just like cut out a little piece of paper and just put my hands over it. And like this was like an online thing that I read. So, and then try to figure out like which one said yes or no, or which one was like this number. I would just do it with like a few. And then I started like doing it within. Okay, what does a yes feel like? What does a no feel like? And so it started with like, oh, is my name Mina? And I'd breathe in and out and see how that feels. And then I would see like how my body tries to say like it's a yes or no. So it's like very easy. Or I'd just be like, my name is Mina. So like yes or no responses in the beginning, actually I would say was the easiest. So it's like saying like, my name is Mina. Seeing how your body feels when you say that. And then say another name after a few times. And like that's another name that's not yours, but that same other name several times. See how it feels within, or if there's like a voice that says no or something. And then so you go back to your name, see how that feels. And it's just like, oh, there is something responding within. So, and then when you have that intuition, you could start to ask it for more yes or no's when it comes to these situations, as you start to strengthen your intuition in other ways, when you start like becoming confident in your intuition in a way that like it sounds louder even. Like that's why meditation and stuff like that, yoga is really good for you. There's other ways too, but I would say meditation is really important. And I didn't want to hear that for a long time, that I didn't know that that was going to go into strengthening my intuition, but I didn't want to know that like, hey, that, like all these other types of meditation that I would be like, oh, I'm meditating in this way. And those were great too. Those were more mindfulness practices that I would say was meditation. And then when I actually like sat down and was meditating, then I realized, like for me at least, that was the meditation that I needed. And so yeah, so that was helpful. And then now like I trust myself more in decisions. But even then I still check in and say and try to get like a yes or no sometimes, especially if I just feel like sometimes I really want it to be the other answer, like want it to be a yes, even though like it's been showing me no. But then I'm at a point where it's just like I fully trust the fact that like that's the answer that I should be going with. So over time, you could get that type of strength and trust. And it doesn't mean like, oh, you don't take any steps without checking in, but it's just like it's a part of you. It's always telling you like when if you've ever watched podcasts with like millionaires or billionaires talking about like their businesses, and they're like, oh well, I had my gut said yes. Like they talk about their gut instincts a lot, and even on Shark Tank and stuff, I've heard them talk about their gut. And so some of them might just be saying the word, but I feel like if you're making those type of big deals, like it's pretty loud, and they've probably made some like mistakes here and there that cost a lot of money, that when they didn't trust this feeling that they had, that now they say it's their gut instinct. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, so butterflies are really important for you to figure out what they are before you just put a label on them. And so the next time you watch a movie, especially ones that like if you're rewatching rom-coms or holiday movies, it's good to like keep an eye out when they say that and try to put that investigator hat on. You still enjoy the movie, but put that investigator hat on because your subconscious is picking things up. So over time, like there's some movies like I just won't watch, even though like I used to love them, because I know that like there's just too many things happening in the movie that is just not good for my subconscious to pick up, even though I know better with a lot of things. But I know where my vulnerabilities are when watching certain types of movies. And so I don't want that type of influence, but I still watch other like rom-coms and stuff. But now it's cool to watch some of them and know that, wow, I used to once think that these movies were like some gold standard of like relationships, and like, wow, see, like you gotta put in the effort in this way when this relationship is so chaotic and stuff like that. And then now being out of it, be like, oh, well, a lot of these end up like being toxic relationships, even though they get married in the movie, but that's just a movie. Or maybe it's like these are just the pieces that they've shown in the movie, but they're not real characters in real life. And sometimes people just put up with things, and that doesn't mean it's good for them either. And so now watching movies, and doesn't mean like life isn't like can't be up and down or a little bit of chaos and you run away. It just means that sometimes in these movies, the type of chaos that they show in the beginning of like in relationships and stuff might not be healthy for you to pick up. Because I've even heard interviews of celebrities talking about like their meet cute moments, which is like in movies, I hope I'm describing it right, like when they meet that person and it's like they call it a meet cute. And so it's like a cute moment that the two people like meet for the first time. It doesn't have to be like cute all the time, but it's like a moment they meet and it's like, oh, wow. Like, and so some of them I've heard in interviews over the years, or on like late night shows where they talk about like having that. And so like they describe relationships like that, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing or that they're in bad relationship, but it's just interesting that like they're really focused on that too, because they're influenced by that. Anyone is, if they're not sure what a good healthy relationship is. And so it doesn't mean that meet cutes are bad. It just means that sometimes when they are bringing up like, oh, so they are influenced by these type of rom-com meet cute moments, that like then they really like, because then what happens is like, just like us, like we hold on to it sometimes, especially if you're like, if you watch a lot of those types of movies, like you're just anything with like people meeting in relationships, it's like you hold on to those and then you're just like, oh well, like we just like there was so much like chemistry, or there was butterflies and all that in the beginning. Like you really hold on to that beginning moment, or the first few months moment. So yeah, so it's interesting if you guys end up realizing if your butterflies have been gearing you in the right direction, what you deem as your butterflies being good, or like proceed with caution or bad or whatever. And or yeah, or how you watch movies after watching this. So yeah, I hope that helps. See you later.